Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 113. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. And we're here to pick up your spirits if you had to watch the Pens last night and that disappointing loss to Chicago, which very much diminishes their playoff chances. So, Dave, we're going to be their ray of sunshine on a cloudy day.
Maybe. Penguins laying eggs, right? Boy, worst team in the National Hockey League in the Chicago Blackhawks. Boy, that goaltender was on fire, was he not? Meserick really was playing really, really well. And I thought the Penguins played, pretty good overall. They just couldn't get the puck past them and serve all those chances. And then obviously late gave up a couple of the goals and some empty netters in there, and I guess now it comes down to a game against Columbus, and then needing help with the Islanders. I guess need to lose. So we'll see if Mike Sullivan can pull a Mike Tomlin here and keep the streak alive. So, but the Pirates won on a nice walk off there by Bay, so that was exciting to see. So maybe the Pirates can help carry the flag, so to speak, here for the next few weeks. But we've got a little bit to talk about today, don't we?
We do. Some news coming in yesterday or 2 days ago, and also shortly before you and I jumped on the podcast. And so let's start with the most recent news here coming out Wednesday morning. Pittsburgh Steelers, bit of a curious, odd/surprising decision. This team releasing edge rusher Jamir Jones, who had just signed his 1-year exclusive rights tag back in February. So for him to get the release, didn't see that one coming. Obviously, not going to impact this team too terribly much. He was a number 4 outside linebacker, special teamer, but I wonder what the story is there with Jamir Jones. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see if anything else follows this. Immediately people want to react to it and say, well, they're making room for someone else, or, is this related to Bud Dupree and, something along those lines. But here's the thing. You've got a 90-man roster that you can fill during the offseason. They're nowhere close to hitting that number. The Jamir Jones contract, by deleting him, does not save any salary cap space in the Rule of 51. So there's no reason to do that. And it's not like his skill set. I mean, he's more special teamer than he is anything else. So was this just him reading the writing on the wall and saying, hey, look, I want to explore maybe what else is out there. Is this something off the field that will surface in the next 48 hours? It's really hard to say, but it is a curious move here in the middle of the week to have a guy that signed his exclusive rights free agent tender and is now out the door, especially when it doesn't save any money. And, your depth chart at the outside linebacker position isn't all that great on top of it. And specifically, you could use some special teamers, but I have a feeling we'll learn more about this potentially here in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, we'll see. And as you said, not that Jamir Jones was going to be counted on to be quality or top or immediate edge depth, but right now there really is not much behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Now it's basically Quincy Roche. And so for Jones to be at least that placeholder, and even if this was somehow related to Bud Dupree, which it isn't, Jones and Dupree, they serve different purposes on this team. Dupree, if signed, would be a number 3 rotational outside linebacker, would play heavily on defense, very little, if at all, on special teams. Jones is number 4 that would play primarily, maybe close to exclusively on special teams. So they really serve 2 functions, different functions for this roster. So don't know the story there, but something to watch. And certainly, edge depth has to be addressed in some form or fashion over the next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Curious. Didn't expect to wake up to this one today.
Yep, that's for sure. Didn't expect the team to add to its defensive line either, but they have. The other day, signing veteran defensive lineman Armon Watts, and we don't know exact contract details on that. Probably a 1-year deal for a very low-level type contract that you can probably walk through, but veteran guy that still has some youth to him, 26 years old, I want to say, spent last year in Chicago, former 6th-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings. You've watched his tape some, I've watched his tape some. Your impressions of Armon Watts?
Yeah, not a big guy that can play in the middle there. And on the heels of Fehoko getting signed, you look at his tape and you look specifically at how he was. And make sure we get out there that another win for the Alex Kozora, what they look for, because this is one that just from a flat out measurable standpoint hit the marks. I don't think he did. He had a hamstring, didn't he, during his pre-draft process back several years ago, and I think that prevented him from doing things at the combine at his pro day. So I don't think he had a complete, the 3-cone and all that stuff. But I mean, as far as flat out measurables, height, weight, arm length, hand, those kind of things, I think he matched. And I think you even had a blurb there at the end of, what was it, 2019,
Yep.
What they look for article there. So how he was used specifically last year for the Bears was more of an interior guy. He lined up mostly between the guards there. He was mostly a first and second down player for them. I think the thing that jumped out right away on his I went through 3 games of his. I looked at the PFF grading of him. I took his best game, his worst game, and one of the games right in the middle there, and flew through the all 22 on all 3 of those games. And I think the thing that stuck out first and foremost with him was the lateral agility, and really just the agility overall. I think the second thing that stuck out to me was the use of those long arms and the ability to get off blocks and make some plays. I think he can improve on some of the tackling there. He gets to some guys and lets them get free a few times there. So that did stick out there. Probably not the best get off in the world when it comes to him. And I think another thing that stuck out to me was he has a tendency to rise up at the snap of the football sometimes as well too. I liked his play in the games that I watched from last season. Now look, he had 7 or something sacks 2 years ago or something for
5, yeah,
or a pretty decent sack total a couple of years ago with the Vikings. I haven't gone back and specifically looked at each one of those to see the quality of them. In his tape from last year with the Bears, however, I didn't view him as being all that great of a pass rusher. Seemed to get stymied a little bit at the line. Now they did use him in those 3 games. At least they stunted him and twisted him quite a bit in there, and sometimes around the edge there, which obviously slows some of your time getting to the quarterback there. But I wasn't overly. He does have some athleticism to swim over some guys and get into the backfield, and had a nice sack lining up over the tackle, I think, against the Jets, where he worked back inside and got a nice sack on. I think that was his only sack last season there. But at least on last year's tape, wasn't impactful as a pass rusher, but was used mostly as a first and second down guy. And I thought he played pretty decent against the run, but he does fit what the Steelers look for. He does have that athleticism, and because of how he was used in Chicago and the amount of staff. And look, this is a guy too that in Chicago or with Minnesota, he qualified for a proven performance escalator after his first 3 seasons. That resulted in a salary last year well over $2 million. And while he was waived by the Vikings, I guess, prior to the start of last year. The Bears had no issue claiming him and carrying him on that salary last year, and he played 500 something snaps in total. And once again, most of those came on first and second down, and most of them came with him lined up in between the guards.
I had two thoughts when looking at the tape of, is it Armon or Armon? I think I might be saying that slightly off. Watts.
Armon Watts.
Armon Watts. Two thoughts. One was, I think the foundation of being a good defensive lineman, you can sum it up into three words, and I think he has all these baseline traits: hips, hands, feet. Those are the baseline things you need to have as a defensive lineman: good hips, good hands, good feet. I think he shows that. I think his hips, ability to get skinny, turn and bend through contact, the hand use to be active, to stay disengaged, and overall, I think just good feet for balance. And as you said, flowing laterally. Not that he's a great athlete that's going to run in space and is going to go chase guys down, but overall, I think the hips, the hands, the feet fit well for the position he's playing. Then I think, too, you go back to his college experience. He was a one-year starter at Arkansas. He was a really late bloomer that didn't see time hardly at all with the Razorbacks until that final season. And so you saw his NFL career kind of get off to a slow start. Of course, 6th-round pick, reserve guy in Minnesota. And then, as you referenced, 2 years ago, had that big 5-sack season. And so that's probably a product of a guy that, was that late bloomer, took a while to get some experience, of course, making the jump to the NFL. And you've seen some, better tape and more productivity for the past 2 years. And so I thought his tape was actually pretty good. You compare that to Fehoko, I think his tape was a lot better than Fehoko. He offers more as a pass rusher, better athlete overall, for probably pretty similar, if not identical, type price tag. So I think that guy, for being, in kind of early mid-April, to be out there and be signed is a pretty quality get.
Yeah, and he can play up and down the line. So even though most of the snaps came, a lot of one tech stuff in there, a lot of them just shade to the right or the left of the center there overall, but can play over the center, can play two tech, and even though there wasn't a lot on his tape last year, he can move on out to the 3, 4-eye, 5, and all like that as well too there. So a very versatile guy. And one, I'm with you. I think arm usage, hand usage, and just overall athleticism you can see on the tape.
Yeah, I think the hips too. I mentioned that, and going back, and it's so funny how handy these scouting reports we did back years ago come back into your review. And I really focused on his hips and had some of the teach tape from Carl Dunbar and just the ability to get skinny and just be a good athlete for that position. I think you really see that there with Watts. And so I guess my question is, Pittsburgh, like the offensive line, collecting a lot of defensive linemen in free agency, in, of course, re-signing Ogunjobi, signing Fehoko, and now signing Watts. What does this mean to you, if anything, about their draft strategy? Obviously, this team needed defensive line help, and after losing guys like Tyson Alualu, Chris Wormley, etc., does this change anything at all in terms of their approach to the defensive line position when it comes to the draft?
I don't think it precludes them from drafting a defensive lineman. But I do. What was the arm length on Fehoko?
32 something, a little short.
A little shorter, but he's more of an interior plugger than anything.
He's a squatty body. Yeah. He's a true nose tackle.
Right. You keep going back and you're thinking about Brian Brzee and all like that. And man, he's got all the measurables and the athleticism. The one thing that he doesn't have is the arm length, right?
Mm-hmm. And
you just wonder how much that might preclude him, and then you look at the other body types outside of maybe Dexter, Javon Dexter out of Florida. He's really the only one that I don't know when you're going to do the defensive lineman, but across the board probably seems to check most of the boxes.
Dexter does, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's got arm length issues too. He's kind of short, like Brzee. So that's a thought there.
And then Benton, he's a little squattier, right?
Yeah, he's, to me, not. I think Dexter is a good athlete. There's stuff in his game he's got to work on to be a better pass rusher. He wasn't super productive in college. His get off, I think, is pretty slow. But Benton's a guy with not a tremendous athlete in open grass type situations, but good quickness, good burst with really good length and size and power and active hands.
I mean, is this a situation where they maybe want just one or two certain guys circled defensive linemen on their draft board, and these last two moves are insurance in case they don't get either one or two of them?
I think there's a level of insurance to it. I think just as you see Pittsburgh kind of have extreme depth on their offensive line, you're seeing it kind of on the same defensively, and probably with more to come. I just can't see Fehoko and Watts, two guys that are going to be on 1-year deals, somehow preventing this team from addressing, a top 50 pick into defensive line. I just don't know how this team could go from we need help to, oh no, we got, Watts and Fehoko, we're good. I just don't think those are the guys that sit there, you clap your hands and say, okay, we're done addressing this position. The one thought I'm having, though, in terms of what it might do to the draft strategy is because we agree Fehoko is like a true plugger 0-1 tech, correct?
Right. And he's not going to be obviously in every down, a guy that you're going to probably throw out there in all situations.
Right. He's like a base 3-4 guy. And Watts offers more as a pass rusher. He's longer. He's a better athlete, but still generally 0-1 tech, maybe a bit of 3 base defense, because he was basically a base defense guy, right? And so are they kind of acquiring their base run stuffers now? And then in the draft, they go after that more 3-tech pass rusher type guy. And
that's a good point. It very well could be. Which of the lot now at this point in the draft class is the guy that could be more of the specifically, nickel, guy that can get after the passer.
Yeah. And so it's still kind of hard to find those names because you look at the Dexters in Brazil, their college production, not great. Dexter's got things to work on as a pass rusher, but those would be the type of names. Would it be a little less of Benton? Perhaps. I think about other guys too, like a Carl Brooks and Bowling Green, which to me is a really good 3-tech, not going to be super stout against the run, but active type pass rusher. I know DeMarvin Leal is in this mix as well, but you see the way that they're building this thing in Philadelphia, the way they built that thing. I mean, they had extreme depth with really, strong rotations to keep guys fresh. So you don't just want one guy in there that's your pass rusher. You want as many of those guys as possible. So I'm still kind of kicking around the idea. I can't see this precluding them from addressing defensive line really in any significant way, but I wonder if they're going to look more towards that 3-tech nickel sub-package guy as opposed to more of that base defensive lineman.
Would you consider Brazil to be that kind of guy?
Yeah, I would see him more. And again, obviously, these guys are versatile, and you can't just be a pass rusher and solely a pass rusher and win in Pittsburgh. You're still in, nickel a lot in terms of rundowns. But, I would see it'd be a little less of the Broderick Martins and a little less on Keanu Benton as well, and maybe more focused on the Brooks and Brzee. And if you can coach him up, a guy like Dexter.
When you and look, this team obviously could at some point re-sign Wormley as well too, but he's going to be more of a better run defender than anything too.
Yeah, he's a guy that didn't play in a lot of sub last year once Ogunjobi was brought in. Wormley did 2 years ago and had 7 sacks. They weren't super quality. And I think with Watts, I mean, he's got a couple quality sacks, but I was trying to see the breakdown of when he got his sacks of I think he has 8 or so career sacks. Only 2 of them have ever come on third down, and they were both low quality cleanup coverage type sacks. And so, I mean, he's got some impressive pass rushers out there. He's certainly a better guy than Fehoko in terms of getting after the quarterback, but is he going to be a guy used that much in sub package? The Bears nor the Vikings have done that. And so he seems to be maybe not kind of like Montravius Adams in the sense of they're nose tackles, but they got a little juice to their game. And I think Watts is more refined than Adams right now.
As far as the timing goes with this, with Watts, this very well could have been the result of that deal being out there for Watts from the Steelers for a while, and him saying, let me look around for a little bit. It's weird too. All these guys have been David Cantor guys too, right?
It has been weird. Yeah.
Agent David Cantor. And this is the last, it was Fehoko, Neil, and now our Armon Watts, right? All 3 of them were David Cantor guys. That's kind of interesting. Makes you wonder maybe if this deal for Watts had been sitting on the table for a little bit, and Watts saying, well, let me get to a certain point here and see what else is out there. And then the Steelers probably saying, look, we got to know something with the draft coming up 2 weeks away. Are you in or are you out?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of situation. I would be surprised if this is, and we don't even know the length of the deal yet, but I'd be surprised if this is more than a 1 year veteran benefit deal. Maybe they gave him a $50,000 signing bonus like they did LaRaven Clark, but even the max signing bonus on a veteran benefit contract would be $152,500. So I would think that's the max of the deal there once we get the details.
Yeah, that's probably right. I do want to see the exact numbers because, I think his tape is better than Fehoko or Clark. Like, he's somebody that is in a tier above those type of guys.
All right. So you would agree, though, a max of $152,500 signing bonus? Or could you see this being a bigger deal than that?
That's probably what it's going to be, that kind of max level. What do they call it? Veteran?
They call them now veteran benefit contracts.
Veteran benefit contracts. Okay. That's probably what it's going to be, but I do want to see what those numbers are because this guy started, 17 games the last 2 seasons and played a bunch of snaps and has 7 sacks. So there's something there. And again, I think he's a guy that's kind of rounded into form 3-4 years in the league after being a really raw 1-year college production guy at Arkansas. So you're kind of seeing his game develop. So if you're trying to map out how this defensive line room looks for week 1, let's assume they carry 6, this team's kind of adding some names. The question is who sticks.
Right. So
you have Hayward, Ogunjobi. Liao's kind of this wild card, depending on what you want to call him, depending on where they want to use him. You got Watts, you got Fehoko, Loudermilk, of course, Jonathan Marshall, you can throw in as well. Montravius Adams, still technically as of right now, you're starting nose tackle. So, you got some names there, but I just wonder, is it a quantity over quality?
And look, Loudermilk right now, obviously, like several of these guys on this, and we talked about Montravius Adams the other day. A lot of these guys obviously are not guaranteed to make the roster. And we'll see what happens with Wormley later on in the offseason as well, too. We've been resigned to the fact for a while now that Tyson Alualu's done in Pittsburgh. So there's one definitely out the door there. They could still use young talent in that room as well, too.
Sure.
Pedigree guys,
If you had to kind of roughly rank who has the best chance of making the roster, I know we're still so far out from these things really mattering, but of Fehoko, Adams, Watts, and Loudermilk, like, who do you feel is inside the bubble, who's outside, who's maybe right on that line?
Watts does give you a lot more versatility of all these guys right now. So I would probably rank him first. Fehoko, if you're going Fehoko versus Montravius Adams 1-to-1 for in the middle as a plugger, I'd probably choose Fehoko right now.
Okay, and Adams does cost a little bit, so there is a bit of savings there. I know you had just written about that, correct? Right.
So you have a little bit of savings in there as well too. But at least you got people now that you're kind of injury protected that have the same skill set. And look, Loudermilk's on the outside looking in, I would think right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I
don't know what to do with Liao until we see what they're going to do. What the plan is for him.
Right. I think regardless,
he should be on the roster. Obviously, you wouldn't think they're going to cut him 1 year after as early as they drafted him. It's just it's something that we've stated since last season ended. What is he? And all we've got to go off of is what Omar Khan said at the at the combine. We're probably going to keep using his versatility.
Yeah, I think regardless, in terms of his defensive line work, he's not much of a base guy. He's that sub-package type guy. That's why you're seeing this team sign more base types in Fehoko, in Watts. I think Loudermilk certainly outside looking in. He's got to make a push to secure his job in 2023. I know that you could construct a 6-man defensive line room right now based off the current guys they've signed. And so that leads some people to believe that they're not going to address defensive line as highly. I just don't know what the quality of that room is once you get past the top names, of course, in Hayward and Ogunjobi. I think Watts probably makes this team. Obviously Liao's going to have a role of some sort, but I still think they just need to add more talent. They're adding some depth. They're adding some good role type guys. But, I don't think Fajoko's guaranteed to make this roster on the literal minimum contract that he signed. I don't think Adams is guaranteed to make this roster right now. Either Watts is not either, but I think he's got a better shot. He's got better tape overall. So my mindset has kind of shifted perhaps to them looking more towards that 3-tech, that better pass rusher to round out the room.
And look, there's questions about that class right now too, past Carter, right?
Yeah, I think trying to find that great pass rusher.
If Brazee had longer arms, I'd feel a lot better about him. And if he didn't kind of have the injury history, it really is no. But still, in the same breath, knowing that they probably like the kid, from the hearts and smarts, and when the tape's good, it's real good on him.
Yeah. So, because could he be a guy at 32? I think 17 is looking less likely, but 32. Is that possibility there? Kalijah Cansey's that interior guy that's a really good pass rusher, but I just don't see him as a scheme fit really in any sense. And I don't think
agree.
Pittsburgh's interest has been, reported that much. And so Cansey's probably not going to be that guy. But yeah, you go back to the Dexters, and I'm taking a look at Carl Brooks. He's got the production, he's got the sack, reel, and I know he's played in the MAC, smaller schools, but he's a really good athlete. He's playing linebacker early in his career, so he's somebody that could kind of be that true 3-tech.
And the Broderick, the kid out of was it Western Kentucky?
Broderick Martin. Yep.
He's more of the inside plugger though.
Yeah, he's a 0-1 tech. He's like Watts. I mean, he's actually kind of like Watts in a lot of ways in terms of pretty good athlete for the position, for the frame, good hand use, but he's not going to be a big sack guy. He had a couple sacks in his career.
And Mazzie Smith, a little bit of a larger guy.
Yeah, I think that's where you kind of see maybe this takes Smith out of consideration because, while there's some stuff to work with him, and he certainly has the build Pittsburgh looks for, are you going to get great pass rush production from him? And he's kind of that more 0-1 tech plugger. I think maybe that reduces those chances some. Right.
Now, look, if we see the Armon Watts contract and it's, more than the minimum and a larger signing bonus than $152,500, then it leads you to believe that, they might have plans for him.
Yeah, and I still think even if it is that 1-year deal, nothing's assured. He's got to earn it, got to prove it. But I think he's got a good chance to make this team just because I think the tape's good. He's got more experience, and he's going to offer more as a pass rusher.
Okay. All right.
But like the signing overall. And I think, again, you're just seeing Pittsburgh really build extreme depth along its interior trenches, interior offensive line, interior defensive line. You're really seeing this team add up.
Well, once again with Watts, did you come away from his tape like I did, better against the run than he is a pass rusher?
Yeah, I would say so, but I'm kind of intrigued by that pass rush relative to his position of being that 0-1 tech. I thought was better than what I expected.
Okay.
And it kind of reminded me, and I had to go back to that profile of him I did a couple of years ago and thought, oh yeah, this guy had good hips.
Did
good
you
hands.
even remember doing him?
I didn't. Honestly, I didn't even know if we had one, and I searched it. I think I saw you tweet about it, and I went, oh, I wonder who did that. And I went, oh, I did that. I wrote that report. And so kind of brought back those memories. But yeah, okay. they come in handy for sure.
Get off, not great. Could be better.
Yeah, it's not great overall. He's kind of been through contact, shed the block, then one gap and penetrate and beat the block. He's not really that type of guy.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about, we go from signings to potential trades, and we talked so much way back when, speaking of 2019, the big discussion draft time then was the Devin linebackers, Devin Bush, Devin White. Kind of knew that Devin White was not going to be in play for Pittsburgh because he was going to be well inside the top 10. Ultimately, he goes to Tampa. Pittsburgh trades up with Denver to get Devin Bush, and so Devin Bush now in Seattle. That did not work out, obviously. And now Devin White, better player of the two, he wants out of Tampa Bay, reportedly, according to local and national reports. And so, of course, when that came up, first reaction is, would Pittsburgh have any interest? You wrote about that this morning for Steelers Depot, Dave. That's sticky, top of the page for people to go read, but kind of walk us through your thoughts on Devin White.
Yeah, let's assume he does want out. And supposedly it's related to how contract talks this offseason are going, or I guess in his case aren't going. And first and foremost, I think it's important to keep in mind that this is a Devin White that received the 5th-year option over a year ago from Tampa Bay. And right now, because of that, he's scheduled to earn a fully guaranteed $11.706 million in 2023. If he's wanting a new contract, I can almost guarantee he's looking for a new money average at a minimum of 12.5 a year. And you'd have to think that he's shooting higher than that. How much higher? Well, currently Roquan Smith of the Ravens is the highest paid off the ball linebacker at $20 million per year. I think he's barking up the wrong tree if he's expecting that kind of money. A new money average of $13 million for him would rank him 9th overall on the current list. Is he wanting to settle for just that? I don't think he's in the range of the Tremaine Edmonds or anything like that either, which I think is around 18 million or so like that. So I could see him shooting for somewhere around, $15-16 million a new money average right now. And that might be some of the holdup when it comes to the Buccaneers right now, because he has stayed on the field. He has racked up quite a few tackles, but I'm not so sure that overall in the coverage and combined areas of the game that he's worth that kind of money, to be quite honest with you. Now, he is still young and he's got that going for him. That's going to make him attractive. Once again, he's put up a lot of total tackles across the league as well, too. So if you want to look specifically at the Steelers as it relates to it and why I don't think, there's he's going to end up landing in Pittsburgh. If you decided that you did want to trade for him, I would imagine that you'd have to ask permission from the Buccaneers to talk to him to pre-work out what an extension would look like for him, because he is in the final year, of his current contract on the 5th-year option. Second, assuming you got that worked out with him ahead of time, then you'd have to talk about the Buccaneers about what kind of compensation they would want for him. I would think at the very least they'd want a second for him, wouldn't you?
It's hard to say for sure. I haven't followed his career too much. It seems like he's gotten mixed reviews in Tampa, where I guess the general feel with him is like he's never been the coverage guy he was built to be with that 4.4 speed, similar to Devin Bush, maybe a bit better overall. He's been the better player, better run defender, but it's kind of been, I guess, obviously he wants money and he's going to get paid, so that he's done something right, but I feel like whenever I hear Tampa Bay fans talk about him, they always sound kind of disappointed in his overall game.
Right. I would agree there. And I haven't gone deep down inside of his film or anything like that. But all right. So let's say you worked out the compensation and you worked out the trade compensation and you worked out the contract for him. To acquire him, you would first have to be able to wedge in that $11.706 million salary of his before you executed the extension, which would in turn lower his cap number in 2023. Technically, the Steelers would have to free up a little bit of cap space to do that. Now, is that a huge issue in all this? Look, if you want the guy, you can free up a little bit of cap space. You still got the Watt restructure out there to fall back on, and all like that. But it's still yet another thing that they would have to overcome. Another thing is you just went out and signed 2 free agent and off the ball inside linebackers in Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts. Now, obviously Roberts is more of a 2-down guy, whereas Holcomb is, you're expecting him to be the three down guy in the middle there. So you would be adding on an even more expensive guy in Devin White in addition to those two. And then there's the whole, goes back, people don't like to hear it and say, you're giving this too much press, so to speak. It's the whole, what does this team want to spend in cash in 2023? And if things go the way we think they will with an Alex Highsmith new contract or extension later this offseason, they're going to be right at the top of cash expending. So, or cash spending for the 3-year period. Obviously, if you decided you want to spend more, I'm sure the NFLPA will be more than happy to watch you do that. But if you're talking about a contract that even a new money average on Devin White that average, let's say 13 million, you're talking about another, I don't know, 15, 16 million in 2023 cash outlay to get such a deal done, which would put them about that a much amount over what they're kind of projected to spend. So I think you and it's not, to me too, I'm with you. There are kind of questions about, is he worth that kind of money? You know? So I think when you add all those things together, it really, really makes it, you know, you're talking about contract, you're talking about trade compensation, you're talking about cash, you're talking about moves you've already made in during the offseason and free agency to shore up the inside linebacker position. You add all those things together, and it really, really seems highly unlikely that that Pittsburgh will be a destination for him.
I'm with you, Dave. You know, could Pittsburgh, if they really wanted to, if there was some universal force that made them do it, sure, they could do it. They got draft capital on day 2 that they could spend, and you can make it work financially. And you did pay Landon Roberts, but it's not a ton of money, and you could start, you know, Devin White over him if you really wanted to. I just don't see it happening overall. I think this team has made its moves at inside linebacker. They've gotten kind of their 3-down guy in Cole Holcomb. And so they'd probably be less interested in maybe a, you know, what would be an ideal 3-down guy in Devin White, at least based on the way that you're paying him. Although again, White has struggled some in coverage, so just don't see it happening.
And frankly, if you paid him that kind of money, he's going to be you would expect him to be on the field all 3 downs,
downs,
right? And then Holcomb becomes your more expendable 3rd down guy.
Yeah, and Holcomb got paid less, but you paid him to be your 3-down guy, so you're going to go turn around and then go pay Devin White to be your 3-down guy. Probably not going to be their overall plan and strategy. So don't see that happening. Honestly, he may stay in Tampa Bay. I think what you're seeing from a lot of players in this day and age, and I'm not mad at them at all. I respect it, and they can use their leverage as they want to. Whenever those contract talks stall, they start asking for trades. They start putting that out there. Not even always because they 100% won out, but because they want to start putting some public pressure on the team to try to get a deal done. Great example of that is Laramie Tunsil. You know, we heard those trade rumors back in the offseason. You know, might want to go to Kansas City, might want out. They can't do a deal. They get a deal done, and everybody's all happy to stay in Houston. And so I think you're just kind of seeing players mimic that type of tactic. And again, you know, more power to them. But you're seeing teams use that, their players use that to try to, you know, be able to secure and put some public pressure on to get that long-term deal.
All right, so there's two questions we always get when something like this happens. Could the Steelers do it, and would the Steelers do it? Could they do it? Look, I've learned over the years when watching, you know, studying the cap and all like that. Could they do it? Absolutely, they could do it. From a financial standpoint, could they do it? Absolutely, they could do it. Will they do it? That's where I think all the things that we rattled off there is what makes it the probability level be extremely low here. So, and look, almost any guy at this point, you know, the way you can massage the cap. I mean, you can, the answer is always, could they do it? Yes, probably. But then you get into, would they do it? And in this situation, I personally don't think they would.
Right. And then it gets to the other question of, is it worth it? Which is, of course, more subjective, but I just don't think it is based on what I know about White. Not that I've studied this guy super in depth, but from what I've read and heard and listened to over the years, his coverage, you know, ability has been, again, underwhelming. You know, 4.4 speed does not mean you can cover. It just means that you're a fast guy. They're two separate traits and skill sets and ability. So, and then paying all that money, investing that much in your off-ball linebacker position, which is maybe, you know, less valuable than investing more heavily in your defensive line. It doesn't really check those boxes for me.
Right. And this will go to the long list of the listeners saying, this is just Dave and Alex poo-poo and every idea that comes down the pipe. But we try to look at these these situations as objectively as possible. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and if we're wrong, then we'll admit it, and we'll have a whole lot to talk about if we're wrong and this team becomes serious contenders for Devin White. I think he ends up maybe staying in Tampa Bay, to be honest with you. I could see him, just posturing and then 2 months from now go sign that long-term deal.
It's quite possible.
Speaking of contracts, you wrote yesterday about Pat Freiermuth, just kind of taking some longer views on this team's, contracts, which is something every good GM, every good cap guy should be able to do, because you have to look at the present of where your team is at now, but also where you're headed. We talked about Najee Harris a bit a while ago, and then Pat Freiermuth as a potential contract extension. Now, Harris is a fifth-year option guy, but just looking at the future of some of these young guys you've drafted, developed, where they're going to be contractually. So kind of take us to Pat Freiermuth, Dave.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, you throw that stuff out there on Pat Freiermuth being the most likely guy to get the extension, a contract extension, the same, who we'd be talking about the most when it comes to contract extensions a year from now. People automatically go back to, well, why isn't Najee Harris on that list? And I think we covered that pretty thoroughly, that, more than anything, it's a fifth-year option decision with Najee Harris. Now, once again, you could go back to the whole Christian McCaffrey thing, right? They got an extension done with him before even getting to the fifth-year option deadline. So is it plausible that Najee could get an extension, in the same breath or same situation that McCaffrey? Yeah, it's plausible, but we've never seen the Steelers do, and this will be something else to track with Omar Khan, right? We've never seen, especially when they had the luxury of having another year to go, extending guys technically 2 years out. Now, technically right now, he's only 1 year out, or would be technically 1 year out at the end of this coming season until his fifth-year options exercise. So you get into, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank on
referencing what?
Yeah,
exactly?
just logistics of semantics.
Okay. Semantics.
Yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to something like this, quite honestly, I would be surprised if they extended, unless Najee just blows it out, which is, he could have one of those seasons that, man, we got to get this guy locked up now, kind of thing. But I'm not planning on that happening. So moving past Najee being a prime candidate for an extension next summer, which once again, I'll be surprised that it happens. I think Pat Freiermuth is a guy that a year from now we're having the same conversations that we're having about Alex Highsmith this offseason here. First and foremost, it is a year out. A lot can change between now and this time next year. But I don't think there's any reason to think that Pat Freiermuth won't have a 2023 season at least equal to the average of his first two. Hopefully it's better, without saying. Hopefully he plays all 17 games. And assuming that he does have a similar or better season in 2023, he's going to be a guy that you're looking to lock up next summer, I think. Now, what will that look like? I mean, that's a question that will slowly get answered as the 2023 season moves on. I would like to think that he would be in line for an extension that would rank him no worse than 10th overall highest paid tight end in the NFL. And while these rankings can and will change over the course of the next year, currently the 10th highest paid at the tight end position is Zach Ertz at $10.55 million. And right above Ertz sits Evan Ingram with the Jaguars, who's presently wearing that $11.345 million franchise tag. So it'll be interesting to see if they get something done with him. And Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots currently sits ahead of Ingram at $12.5 million in the top 10 rankings. Now, something to watch closely as the rest of the offseason progresses here is you've got TJ Hawkinson and Cole Kmet, two young players that probably compare more along the lines of a Freiermuth to where he is at right now. Both those guys are more likely than not going to sign extensions this offseason that will, Hawkinson, I think without a doubt, is going to land in the top 10. And I think there's a good bet that Cole Kmet does as well, too. So long story short, if I had to guess this far out, and we're talking a lot can happen, between now and this same time next year. I'm thinking that the fair market value for Freiermuth a year from now will be somewhere between 11 million and 13.75 million in new money average.
And that would place him around 10th, you said, in terms of top tight ends?
Probably somewhere in the top 10. I don't know if it would be 10th specifically, once again. But, I mean, I think without a doubt, whatever number 10 is come a year from now, he's going to be bucking to be inside that number.
Sure, and that could shift a bit because you're right. Hawkinson, that deal is going to get done. Minnesota trades for him. They're going to want to ink him, and Cole Kmet could be another as well. So, yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it much. It's a good exercise. It is a good thought. It's a conversation we probably are going to have to some degree a year from now. I guess the only reservation I have about that, and I know it's an exercise and we're just kind of thinking out loud and talking about the future, is all the concussions he's had. He's had, 3 of them in 2 years, and he suffers another. And even if he has a good year overall, you start worrying about, doing a long-term deal with a guy with a concussion history. And it's not his fault, obviously, and it's nothing to blame him for, but you just wonder about that. So, just
and like I said, a lot can happen, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously, if he misses multiple games and concussions at the core of it, and he doesn't put up the stats that he's put up the first 2 years in the league, then you really got to look at it. But right. I'm going to assume right now that he's going to play at least 16 games, and he's going to put up the stats that he put up the first 2 seasons.
Sure. What I'm saying is, let's just say he suffers a concussion, misses a game, maybe 2, but otherwise has a good year. Like when he plays, he's going to be a good player. He's going to be a very like high floor guy in terms of, reliable hands, good route running, tough after the catch. I have no question about Freiermuth on the field, but let's just say he plays 15 games, has, overall a very strong season, but has another concussion. How do you weigh that? How do you balance, okay, he's a good player on the field versus the investment risk of this guy, would have, I guess at that point, 4 concussions in 3 years. You start trying to figure out what do you value, what do you weigh, how do you try to plan a contract, knowing all that.
Well, then you got to rely on your medical people, right?
Right. And Ladarius Green, hopefully maybe some different people evaluating Freiermuth than the ones who looked at Ladarius Green. So, yeah, all good thoughts there. He certainly would deserve to get paid. And, again, we're assuming a concussion here that has not happened in 2023 just based on history. And, you can talk about Kenny Pickett's concussions too. We can go down that rabbit hole. But just the one thought in terms of a reservation coming to mind when we start talking about a Pat Freiermuth long-term deal next year.
Agreed.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Dave, do you want to mention, just didn't mean to gloss this over, but we did have a pre-draft visitor come to Pittsburgh yesterday. That was just one name reported, in Robert Beal, the edge rusher from Georgia, who was more productive 2 years ago than he was in 2022, with all those guys like Nolan Smith and some of the great talent that Georgia has. And so Beal viewed as more a day 3 guy. I don't know exactly where to slot him, if he's 4th round, if he's 7th round. He's got some length. The testing was not ideal for him, but do want to mention Beal as the most recently known guy to come in on a pre-draft visit. Yeah,
we've got some pre-draft visitors in today now.
Oh, really? They literally just broke?
Yeah, Jaden Reed. We knew Jaden Reed was coming in, right, from very talented wide receiver out of Michigan State. Mm-hmm. We knew safety Daniel Scott out of California was coming in. He's in today. And here's one for you, Alex, quarterback. Jaron Hall out of BYU.
Okay, so all the Senior Bowl guys coming in. Reed, Hall, and Scott were there. I believe Hall was there. I know that for a fact that Reed and Scott were. So, okay, yeah, new Reed, new Scott. And I have an article today about the quarterback room for Pittsburgh, because kind of the one thing they haven't really addressed in terms of depth or anything in terms of filling those gaps is the quarterback position. They got their 2 spots obviously spoken for in Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky. This team always takes 4 to training camp. How and where do they get 3 and 4 is going to be interesting to me.
It really is. And we still sitting here with, was Jaron Hall? Yeah, he was a Senior Bowl guy, right?
I'm like 95% sure. Yeah, he was there. Yep.
Okay. So all 3 Senior Bowl guys.
Yeah. And now Reed's a guy that Tyler Wise has been a big fan of. I've talked about him as, I think, a perfect blend between slot receiver, not necessarily that huge, big slot guy, but not a Calvin Austin, small, shifty guy either. He's versatile. He blocks well, had a really strong Senior Bowl week. He can work in the return game, both kick and punt. Good work ethic, good team guy, selfless type of player, the guy you want in your locker room. I think Jaden Reed and guys like him, a little bit like Parker Washington, Penn State, are really strong fits. In Pittsburgh, Daniel Scott, 6-year guy, Cal, could have come out last year, decided to go back to school, became a team captain, versatile. Maybe the tape doesn't match up with the great testing that he had, but I think he's instinctive. Had a pick 6 off of Max Duggan against TCU two years ago. Good leader, good size overall, tested off the charts in a weak safety class. Older prospect, but that's a name to watch. Probably you're talking maybe 3rd, 4th round on Daniel Scott.
Okay. Interesting.
So I think we're up to 27 of the reported names. Now, some of the names that have been reported, we never got official visits on them, guys like Jamir Jones and others. We never actually got the official thing. I really want to know, Dave, and I have not heard this, but I have to think it's happened. Did Darnell Wright ever come in for a visit with Pittsburgh? That's a guy that you would think would have come in for a visit with the Steelers.
Oh, what does the tracker say?
Well, it's never been reported, but the reports on Wright, I mean, there's been some places we know he's gone. Buffalo, I believe. He had like 20-something visits lined up. I got to think Pittsburgh was one of those names, but it never was actually reported.
Interesting. And we've got the rest of the week to go, right?
Yeah, this will be the last week for the visitors to come in. And so we'll see. Maybe he came in late March. There were some guys that came in late March that were never reported, so that could be a thing. Or maybe he just didn't come in. But that's a pretty big thing I'm trying to hopefully find out by the time the draft rolls around.
All right. Now we've got on the tracker, we've got scheduled to come in and we've got in. How many have been in now?
A lot of them. I'd have to pull up the actual list. In terms of, and when I say in, I mean, those are the ones that have been officially reported. We know the day that they came in
right
to the facility. So it's probably, 15 or so names on that list. I'd have to count them all up though.
All right. Let's see. Clayton Tune was scheduled, but let's see. We've got, I'm going to rattle these off and take your shoes off here.
Okay.
Jonathan Mingo, Charlie Jones, Jaden Reed, Anton Harrison, Cyrus Torrance, Steve Avila, Chandler Zavalia, John Michael Schmitz, Cody Mock, Siaka Ika, Keon White, Keanu Benton, Tuli Tuapoloto, Robert Beal, Tyreek Stevenson, Julius Brents. I'm not going to count Joey Porter because he's local.
Right.
Deontay Banks, Darius Rush, Christian Gonzalez, Daniel Scott, and Tanner Engel, along with the BYU quarterback today on top of it, right?
Right. The only names that have been reported but not been made official in terms of we don't know the day that they came in to like 100% confirm it is Clayton Tune from Houston, the quarterback, Jervon Dexter, the defensive lineman from Florida, Dawan Jones, the tackle from Ohio State, Keely Ringo, the corner from Georgia, and Emmanuel Forbes, the corner from Mississippi State. Those are the ones that have been reported. We had scheduled. We have not actually gotten official confirmation that they have come in for their visits.
And still, let's see, today's Wednesday. You would think they'd wrap up on Thursday, right?
Yes. But again, some of those guys may have come in late March. Jonathan Mingo came in March 20th. I mean, were they only having one guy come in at a time during then? Maybe, but there might have been. I know that during owner meetings, Omar Khan had talked about a couple guys had already come in. I don't think all that was kind of known at that time. So there may be a couple of those names that had come in March that were never officially reported. Maybe we'll get more Thursday, which I guess tomorrow is kind of the last day. So we'll see on that one. But I know that Forbes is somewhere today. He's not obviously in Pittsburgh, so we'll see what tomorrow brings.
All right.
But yeah, Hall, late round guy. Again, could they take that late round quarterback? Are they trying to do their homework on undrafted, possibilities? I mean, they got to fill that number 3 spot. They always carry 3 unless they're going to change it, but they're doing their homework.
Yeah, they are for sure.
All right, what else do we have here, Dave? And this had a lot of interest and intrigue from Steelers Nation, a pretty popular post yesterday. We had known for a while that Sunday Ticket was going to be leaving DirecTV and going to YouTube, and the official announcement made yesterday in terms of the pricing. And it depends on if you have YouTube TV or not. There's different packages and early promos, but you're going to have to pay a pretty penny to watch some football on YouTube TV through Sunday Ticket this year, Dave.
Yeah, and I think the biggest pushback, at least initially here, is outside of the price. I think people are saying, "Hey, where are single game options or single team options?" You know, and I know there was an article in the Athletic, I think yesterday or the day before, talking about how they're going to consider different packages, but potentially I guess reading this overall, it says, let me read it verbatim here from the Athletic. What is not included so far is the holy grail for Sunday Ticket groupies, buying a single team or even a single game, which DirecTV never offered, but don't fret, it may be coming. And the quote here is, we're doing research on that right now to figure out what are the right types of packages that would be interesting to users. Ostline said, so nothing to announce there, but we're hopeful that we can start testing some new packaging concepts later in the season. So while never say never, it doesn't sound too optimistic that single team packages will be available at least by the start of the season here, right?
Yeah, who knows? That seems like a lot of corporate speak to me, and it probably won't be exactly what fans want. Maybe that
they're going to get a lot of pushback on this. I mean,
but I mean, DirecTV. It's not like DirecTV offered it, and right. YouTube's not. It's never been a thing before, and it just kind of was this thought that people had, and now they're kind of assigning it to. I mean, YouTube TV. They want you to pay. They paid a lot. They paid billions of dollars for this. They're going to make sure they get their money, and so. I don't know if they're going to ever offer the single game or even single team. Maybe they do like a division. You can buy an AFC North package and watch all the AFC North type games. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see on that.
Well, I know a lot of people are hung up on the price, and I get it and all, but we have no choice, or you have a choice. I don't, and several of our guys, we pick up the tab on that as well too for out of area. So I know this isn't a big concern for people, obviously, who live in the local market there, but out, look, either you want to watch it or you don't, or if. I know people like to use those streams or whatnot, but, I can't sit here on this podcast and advocate it, in good faith. But if that's the way you got to watch them, that's the way you got to watch them. It does look like it's, for non-YouTube TV subscribers, even the early route. I mean, I think $349 is pretty fair overall.
Yeah, call me elitist, but I think to pay $350 to watch the NFL the entire season is a pretty good price. That's cheaper than cable if you had to buy a whole cable package, and you obviously can't get all those games. So I don't know. I don't know much about this stuff. I don't have to use the service, obviously being in market for Pittsburgh, but I don't think that price is like wholly unreasonable.
Here's the thing. To be a YouTube TV subscriber, how much value am I going to get off of YouTube TV subscribers?
You're gonna watch all your shows on there, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, I watch football, So, and I have Cox cable or whatnot. And look, I've even had, I'm carrying. I can't wait to. I've been carrying DirecTV because I've had to have it. So imagine what my TV, and then obviously, my wife likes Netflix, so we have Netflix, and I think we have Hulu because it was packaged in with some ESPN stuff. So I've got so many, streaming options here that they add up even for me. So I'll be cutting out DirecTV, obviously, there, but I personally, I don't find much value. And look, I've got an NHL or through the ESPN. I've got the ESPN package, so I watch all the NHL games. I have an MLB package, so I can watch the Pirates when I have time, which isn't very often once the season gets going there. So these things add up for people. But
sure,
I think you boil it back to the point. What you said is, they paid to get this TV package, and they paid a pretty penny for it, and now they got to start trying to recoup that.
Yep, those costs are being shifted to you and I and the people that are going to use the service. So, and listen, I understand like this stuff can certainly be expensive and times are tough, and I don't want to overlook that. I just think $350 to watch the entire NFL for a year or whatever the number is not that.
Oh, sign me up! I would have loved to have. I would have loved to have had this option 20 years ago. Probably not at this price. I probably couldn't afford it, but I see all sides of this. I see people being upset with the price. I see people being upset with not having. One thing I would hope that they would do, and it probably, once again, it's probably not going to happen this year. I think it would be in their best interest to offer single team pricing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, how much would that cost? And I mean, I get it. I mean, if they do it, I'm all for it. That helps people out. Here's my other concern though with YouTube TV. And I think that the one kind of hidden pushback on that is, if you're living in a more rural area that doesn't have great broadband internet, you can't really use the service. You could have a really strong internet connection to be able to, of course, stream an NFL game like that, and instead of DirecTV. But that was satellite based, I guess, DirecTV, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was more accessible to more rural areas or those that didn't have great internet because of the particular place they live that maybe just didn't have great service. So I think that's actually a hidden pushback I've seen multiple people say is I would use the service, but I don't have the internet to support it. And I think that's actually a big infrastructure issue that's not being talked about enough. And that might be the biggest issue I have with this kind of being moved to an online service.
So I would imagine those people would need to have some sort of satellite service, right? Plus YouTube TV.
Right. But if you don't have good internet, can you even stream the games? Like if your internet sucks, if you have spotty, a shoddy Wi-Fi connection, you might have a tough time utilizing the service.
Move.
Okay. And then I've also had some people say, what about going to a sports bar? Can you still watch the games? I forget where I read.
I read something as well too. There's going to be some sort of deal with sports bars and all like that.
Yeah. So that's the news on that.
Move to Vegas and go to the casinos.
All right, Dave, switching gears here. Last thing I want to talk about today was my latest mock draft dropped on Tuesday morning, and the internet, they're not happy. Oh, the natives are restless, Dave, when it comes to my mock draft. I forgot how much hate. Imagine that. I'd actually been pretty good, I think, my first two editions, but I had forgotten how much hate you can get for having one mock draft. And again, just keep in mind, although it falls on deaf ears, this is what I think the team will do, not necessarily what I would do if I was GM, if I was Omar Khan. But let's run through my mock draft and see if you dislike it as much as the vast majority of the internet. At pick 17, starting things off, again, really wrestling with this one. There is no clear-cut choice at 17 in the first round, as opposed to other years. But my pick right now is Brian Branch, the versatile DB from Alabama. So might play safety, play slot corner. He's 21. At that pro day, productive, didn't test all that well, but Pittsburgh has had success with one Alabama safety that's instinctive and high IQ, makes plays on the football. Branch does play bigger, does hit bigger than his size. And so I still don't discount this as an option at 17.
All right, you said the others that you considered here, Joey Porter Jr., Tennessee tackle Darnell Wright, and Brian Brzee out of Clemson there. Was your head in the fact that all three of those would be on the board in this scenario, and you just chose Branch over the three?
Wright and Brzee, I believe, will be there. Porter Jr. was kind of more of, I don't know if he will be, and so let me go in a different direction.
Okay.
So that's I don't use a simulator for those wondering. I don't have anything like that, so they're not necessarily on the board or off the board. It's just kind of in my head of what makes sense. So Porter's still in consideration if he falls to 17, but I think there's a chance he will not make it.
All right. I mean, I understand the selection. Obviously, I mean, we've talked quite a bit, man. If there's one gaping hole right now, it's a sub package corner.
Yeah. And again, this guy can wear a lot of hats, and you're trying to gain back that versatility you lost when Cam Sutton signed with Detroit. And, Casey can offer some of that, but he's, 30, not going to be on this team for super long. And Branch is somebody that can wear a lot of hats and really be an asset in sub package football.
All right. The next guy you have is a guy I really like, but it was a bit of a surprise because the likelihood of Cody Mock having to shift inside at the next level.
Yeah, Cody Mock, my pick at 32, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State. And I get it. I understand. But my counter to that, and I got a lot of pushback on the interior stuff, is this team has done their homework on a ton of interior offensive linemen. So we can't be blind or turn, even though it might not make the most sense to us. If this team's showing the interest there, then we have to respect that. And Mock's a guy that they're going to love because he's a mauler. He's a good run blocker. He's got a great compete. What he did at the Senior Bowl, I think, really impressed Pittsburgh based on him having the willingness to play inside, play center, play guard, do whatever he had to do, and then do it pretty well. And so I think in Pittsburgh, you'd probably try to look at him as a center. He's also a good athlete. The way that he tested was remarkable. If you look at him as a tackle or as an interior offensive lineman. And Andy Weidel at Philadelphia, they drafted some of those Bison guys, and Carson Wentz, Dallas Goedert. And so they've had some success, or at least taken North Dakota State pedigree. Now, again, Weidel was not responsible solely for those picks. He wasn't actually making the pick, but he was kind of around those guys. So I think the competition concerns will be less so given on based on what Weidel experienced in Philadelphia. So I know people didn't like this one. I don't love it either, but I think they're going to like Cody Mock quite a bit. Okay,
and break glass in case of emergency. He can play some tackle for you.
Yeah, he's going to wear a lot of hats. And the other thing, just last note on Mock is, this team does not often bring in these small schoolers as in FCS or below type players in for visits that often. When they have, though, they have drafted those guys. Chris Oladokin last year, drafted. Javon Hargrave back in 2016, drafted. Rob Blanchflower, Cortez Allen, same case. And so when they don't have their eyes on the small school guys that often, but when they do, their interest is usually pretty clear.
Okay.
At 49, and some people say you could switch these two between Mock and Benton, and that's fine if you want to do that. But I have Keanu Benton from defensive tackle, the guy I've talked about endlessly, basically since day one of my draft process. And so I just mentioned earlier, this was made basically right before the Watts.
Before Watts, yeah.
And it does not mean that Benton cannot be the pick. I think maybe it would ding those chances a little bit. He did play primarily 0-1 tech at Wisconsin this past year, but he has the length and size and experience earlier in his Badgers career to play more 3 tech, to play more of the 4-eye. And so I don't want to discount that. I'm still a big fan of his game, big fan of his tape, the wrestling background, the toughness, playing through injury. He has been productive, Wisconsin coach, all things very attractive to Pittsburgh.
Okay. And once again, it's important to note that this is before Armon Watts was signed.
Right. Round 3, 80 overall. Cornerback, a little later on cornerback here, but it is a pretty deep class in Tyreek Stevenson, who was brought in for a visit as well. Man cover corner who models his game after Patrick Peterson. I don't know if I have to say a whole lot else to justify the pick of Tyreek Stevenson.
Checks all the boxes too, right?
I done the look for study on that one. He didn't. What did he miss on? He didn't check. He didn't check every single box. He might have. I think the agility drills, the shuttle, and the 3-cone he missed on by a little bit. But overall, in that profile, that man cover corner, I think he fits.
Okay.
And some people say 80's too late, and he could go earlier than that. But like receivers and those deep classes and deep cornerback classes, some of those names may get pushed down because you have. How many corners do you have that could be top 50 type picks? So it may push somebody like Stevenson down 10 or 15 spots.
All right.
Round 4, 120 overall, going with wide receiver and Parker Washington. Mentioned his name a little bit ago on the show. Just a physical slot receiver, good break tackle, not going to be a burner, not a high-end athlete, but good hands, good body control, and is kind of a Juju type in terms of tough, physical, good after the catch, breaks tackles, runs hard. That's the kind of guy Parker Washington is.
Probably be a little bit higher had he been. Didn't he miss some games last year?
I forget, honestly. He may have. I know he had a couple of big games. I don't know his whole health history, though.
But a guy they obviously know well, obviously has a history in the slot, like you said. Not going to probably wow you from the from the measurable standpoint, but I think good after the catch and those kind of things. So definitely could see him. If you're going to consider this team drafting more slot ready type guy, he's got to be on your list of potential candidates.
Yeah, I think mid-round slot, 3rd, 4th round is where Pittsburgh's going to go take its receiver. Those are the guys they've generally been looking at in the pre-draft process. Plus, Washington, only 21 years old. And so a little bit of youth on his side. That's always, I think, important to the Steelers.
Okay.
All right, jumping to the 7th round, the last pair of picks here in round 7, starting at 234. KJ Henry, the edge from Clemson, just kind of the typical late day 3 pass rusher I've been putting into basically all of my mock drafts. And so he's a guy with size. Production was not great, but obviously we're talking 7th round at this point with some pedigree. They love their Clemson guys. And his testing, he had an injury in the pre-draft process. His 3-cone was pretty poor, but 7th round pick with pedigree, with some length. That's kind of why I went KJ Henry.
I've looked at him overall. I haven't looked at his background on special. Does he have a special teams background?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Probably early in his career as a Tiger in a Power 5 school. That's probably how you first start trying to get on the field. So I don't know for sure, but obviously he would have to start playing there in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Boy, you really came out of left field here with the last 7th round pick here.
Yeah, I think you got to do something kind of different. It can't all be chalk and expected, the names that we kind of commonly talk about. So last pick here in the 7th round, Malik Knowles, receiver /
You couldn't put yourself a quarterback in there as much as you talk about quarterbacks?
I have before, maybe on the last one. We'll see how the final mock draft goes, especially with the Hall pre-draft visit too. That's a signal there. But yeah, Malik Knowles from Kansas State, a guy I still have to learn more about. I was thinking about Danny Smith going to these pro days. I thought about a kicker, but a kicker just seemed too radical in the 7th round, maybe undrafted free agent, but maybe somebody in the return game with Steven Sims signing in Houston and Gunnar Olszewski, his spot certainly not being secure, and Calvin Austin's there, but you're just not sure what you have in him either. And Knowles was a guy that did everything at Kansas State: receiver, runner, kick return game. This guy's got 21 career touchdowns, 14 as a receiver, 4 as a rusher, 3 as a kick returner. He's got size. I think he's got speed. He's a guy that can wear a lot of hats. I think to get guys that are versatile, help you on special teams late on day 3 is pretty attractive.
All right. Main takeaways I'm sure you're getting. Where's the tackle, Alex? And then for Uncle David, where's the tight end, Alex? I would imagine those are the biggest pushbacks.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think especially the tackle one. And now Mock has literally been a left tackle in his career. Right. I think he would play inside in Pittsburgh. He does not have that ideal length, but I do just want to at least say that out loud, is that he was literally a 3-4 year starter at left tackle in North Dakota State. Beyond that, just once you get past those top picks, like past 32, that tackle's not there, then it's kind of hard to find that name. So it's a valid critique overall. This team has done their homework on interior offensive linemen, and so that's kind of why I wanted to go with Mock, and of course, based on the pre-draft visit. So that's fair. Tight end, again, fair as well. Just only has so many picks. They did re-sign Gentry. I don't know what tight end would fit best if they want kind of that blocking type to compete with Zach Gentry. So just kind of, had to leave that one out.
Right. And this goes back to kind of us talk about, man, this team's got, could go several. There's a lot of holes right now. You can make arguments, man, you need to have a tight end in here. You need to have a tackle in here. And other people say you need to have an inside linebacker in there. And,
Yeah. Again, it's hard to fill all those needs. No inside linebacker, no tight end, no tackle. I guess in terms of true, he'd probably stay a tackle at the NFL level. So, you only have 7 picks here and can't fill everything.
Right. All right.
So my last one will come out the week of the draft. I already have an idea maybe what direction I want to go, but we'll have to see how these last couple of visits and what other news may occur, changes those thoughts. But the last one will of course look different than this next to last one.
All right. What else do we have to cover today? Is that it?
I think that's everything. We can get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. Let me pull up the email machine here real quick. Joe Marone writes in, hey there, Dave and Alex. Do you guys have any intel of off-season visits or research by our Steelers scouting department of some of the key players, or maybe even ones in danger of their roster spots, to visually check in to see their weight, fitness, and even training regimens? This seems like a possible method for how they might prioritize their draft needs, even just to provide better direction or reevaluation on what a player might need to focus on before heading into camp in between their season exit interviews. He says, I mean, if the quarterbacks and a wide receiver get together and work out in groups, as we've heard, it would only make sense that the organization visits with some evaluation to make sure these workouts are productive and not counterproductive, especially if scheme plays a role. First and foremost, there's a certain part of the offseason where they really can't have contact, right?
Yeah, the CBA is pretty strict on terms of contact, even with stuff like phase 1 of the offseason program in terms of coaches and being on field. It's all kind of limited to the strength and conditioning coaches in the weight room. So I don't know all the restrictions there, but I think
now a lot of these guys hang around the facility anyway, for the most part, and they're in, sure. and the team gets to see them, and I'm sure conversations take place. But do we have any intel on the Steelers scouting department or key figures going out to drop in and surprise? No, and I would imagine they leave it up to players to, I mean, they probably get schedules from the team. Hey, you should probably do this and do that, kind of training and all like that. But I would think for the most part, these guys, they depend on these guys to handle their own, not be babysat and make sure that when they show up, they show up in top physical condition and ready to go.
Yeah, each guy, generally has their own specific, workout plan. And again, that's where strength and conditioning coaching staffs really become important and play a key role this time. So we're talking, Garrett Guimont and Marcel Pastor is they're going to work with those guys and have their own plans of how we're going to train, how we're going to eat, how we're going to lift. And that's kind of where it becomes more individualized. So that's kind of the focus for them. It's less about scouts and more about, those guys that are going to be helping create that plan for the offseason.
Jonathan Mason writes in, Alex and Dave, what is your best guess as to why the Steelers are doing so much work on this interior offensive line class? Could it be possibly they are thinking of moving James Daniels to center or just upgrading over Mason Cole, even though he was solid last season? Thanks. I mean, long story short, I mean, I just think that the main takeaway here is that that they seem to be doing their due diligence in the interior offensive line class. I think specifically they are looking at a guy that can come in. First and foremost, I'd be surprised if they move James Daniels to center. That's just me. Is it a possibility? I don't think you can totally discount it. I would be a bit surprised. I think what they're looking for here is someone, who could be the backup center, at least initially, if not push Mason Cole for the starter job this offseason here. Now, within that is you've got some guys that, you also seem to be guard capable. So you kind of getting, I mean, most of these guys are outside of Osiris Torrance, right? At least the guys that they're bringing in seem to have at least some center in their background. Even Cody Mock, if you want to consider the Senior Bowl.
Sure. Avilia has it. I don't know if Savala does, though. I forgot to check that.
Avilia does have a little center.
Yeah, he's actually got like 20 plus starts there or something like that. So he's got quite a bit. John Michael Schmidt's obviously a center. Yeah, I don't really know what to make. I've still struggled with that because, I mean, if you're going to draft a center high, like the guys they're looking at aren't late round guys. They're all day 2 type of names. If you're drafting a day 2, center, it's hard to keep that guy on the bench. But I think Mason Cole, obviously you're paying him and he had a fine season last year. So I've really struggled more than anything else trying to get a read on what their thoughts are with all the interest in these guard/centers.
Yeah, Jonathan, I don't know how to best answer your question here. Best guess as to why they, I think they are looking. My takeaway right now is they are at least looking for somebody that's got center capabilities.
But to start, I mean, to be like a top pick?
Well, not necessarily, at least to come in. I wouldn't. I'll still be surprised if it's a top 2 pick, But
the interest they've shown in are the top round guys. They've not shown interest in, and maybe that's something else. Maybe that's just due diligence. But like they're showing interest in top 50 picks.
Sure. My main takeaway is they are looking for someone center capable.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
As to where that might be, I don't know. It is a bit surprising to the depth that they have looked at these interior guys.
Yeah, like I said, I really struggled. It's not just that if they're looking at, again, day 3 picks, and that makes total sense to me. There really is no backup to Mason Cole right now, but I mean, they're looking at, second, third round type names.
They've done enough work on the interior offensive line class at this point. I think I'll be surprised if they don't draft one.
But is it going to be one of those guys they've looked at?
Good question.
If so, will they take a tackle too?
Maybe this is we want to do our due diligence on these guys for later on down the road, but I mean, there's a lot of them that's come in,
Right. Are they going to take a tackle and an interior offensive lineman with 2 of their first 3 picks?
I mean, we're still waiting to see more tackles come in, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, are they? I just can't see where this team is happy with LaRaven Clark is, their swing guy.
Yeah, and Pat Meyer was the busiest man of the positional coaches this offseason. And some of those tackles haven't come in, but they went and saw some of those tackles, and Jones and Johnson and Broderick Jones. And was Pat Meyer at Georgia? Or no, he wasn't at Georgia, but Tomlin and Kahn were there. And Darnell Wright at Tennessee. So, I mean, they've done their homework on these tackles.
All right. Jonathan, it's going to be interesting to watch you play out with the interior work that they've done. Benjamin writes in, "Hi, Dave and Alex. Love the show. You guys do a fantastic job. Best podcast in the business. Quick hypothetical question for you. Paris Johnson Jr. falls to pick 10, and the Eagles are willing to trade back for picks 17 and 49. Do you make that trade?"
I probably would.
Man, if you're going to go up to get anybody, go get a top left tackle. 17 and 49. Yeah, it wouldn't take hard to twist my arm. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, because will one of those tackles, will a Broderick Jones fall? If you look at it kind of where he's being mocked, it's
some are saying
around in that range.
Yeah, and some are thinking maybe he might be the first tackle off the board.
Really? Okay. So it's hard to peg these guys. I mean, I just, is it going to be the first 16 picks, only one tackle goes? I don't know. That just seems, I know the quarterbacks push these guys down, but there's only so many quarterbacks, only 4 of them. You still got other guys to go through. Only one tackle taken in the top 16 just feels like, how often does that happen?
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if I could get back a 5th in this.
You were early jonesing for that 5th. Yeah, you could probably do that.
Yeah. If you threw in the Eagles 5th on top of that, I'm assuming they have a 5th. I haven't looked at it. I'd really be willing to at that point.
Yeah, but I think I'll stand by and say if they do go up, and I think there's a chance they go up. Obviously, there's always a chance, but I think, under Kahn, he's got a chance to be aggressive. But if they do go up, it's going to be for a tackle in Paris Johnson or Broderick Jones.
Last one, Todd Gensler writes in, "Hey guys, with your chatter last episode about the 17th pick being a poor spot with this year's draft, what would you suggest being a better option here? Trade the 17 for a 2 and a 3, trade the 17 for a 2, a 4, and a 5. Any chance for 2 number 2s? Would there be any takers? I would think come draft day, someone would fall in love with a player at that spot. I'm all for draft capital this year unless their guy is still sitting there at 17, and I really wouldn't know who that is." That's such an open-ended question there, Todd. And, obviously we get bombarded with, will they trade up? Will they trade down? What's the best, scenario? When it comes to trade the 17th for a number 2 and a number 3, obviously give me the higher picks anytime you can,
Yeah.
Trade for a 17 for a 2 and a 4 and a 5. I mean, I understand the reasoning there, but I'd rather have a 2 and a 3 than I would a 2, a 4 and a 5. And then any chance for 2 number 2s. I mean, I guess he's talking about a 2 this year and a 2 next year. I don't know. I mean, this makes my brain hurt every offseason when we're talking about, will they trade up? Will they trade down? What's the best option? That kind of thing. It's hard enough trying to figure out who they're going to draft anyway, much along, let alone will they go up? Will they go down?
Yeah.
What will they get in return? Alex, your take on that.
It's about the same. Obviously, if it was a 2 and a 3, I'd take that over a 2, 4, and 5. Just some value standpoint, even if you do want to fill that gap between, round 4 and round 7, which I think they still will. But in terms of will they, could they, everything's possible. Everything has a price. Everything's negotiable. I just go back to 17. I think for Pittsburgh's an awkward spot. There was not that clear name. I think this draft is not super top heavy overall in terms of having elite names outside of maybe some of these quarterbacks, and who the heck knows how they turn out. They're all kind of a 50-50 proposition. So I think picking at 17, it's going to be, aside from Joey Porter, which is kind of the free space on the bingo card that is, projecting these things, it's hard to find that name that really fits well for Pittsburgh at 17.
And several half people listening to this will tell you that Joey Porter won't be there.
Yeah. And that's, if he's there, then I think certainly he's the leader in the clubhouse. Not that you guarantee it, but the question is, what is, I want to maybe write an article on this, but that really cool, draft analyzer. Did you see, you tweeted that out yesterday?
Yeah.
Dave,
The
right?
ESPN one, but I think that mostly works off of their people though. And
sure,
their rankings. But I think Joey Porter Jr. was right there in 15, 16, 17 was a sweet spot, right?
Yeah, again, for whatever it's worth, and this is just a predictor, and you're trying to predict an art, not a science, but they're giving Joey Porter Jr. about a 32 to 34% chance of being there at pick 17. So if you want just to try to quantify the odds of it, not that it guarantees much of anything, but that's about the odds, about a third.
Do you like Joey Porter Jr. enough that you would trade up a spot or two for him?
In a deep cornerback class like this, I probably would not move up to get him. If he's there at 17, different conversation. But I probably, if I'm going up, A, it's for like a Christian Gonzalez if it's a corner. B, if I'm trading up at all in terms of what I think would happen, I think it's, if you do that, you're getting that stud franchise left tackle.
All right, one last one. I lied to you. Paul Francis. Hey, guys, thanks for the hours of entertaining and informative content. Theoretical question for you guys today. Imagine that an expansion team was able to select the first 60 consecutive picks in this year's draft, but could not sign or trade any players for the next 5 years. Instead, they could only continue to play those 60 players from this single draft and would retain all 60 players for these 5 years. Imagine that this team plays in a league average division and has a league average schedule all 5 years. How well do you think this team would do record-wise in their first, second, and third seasons? Do you think this team would win a Super Bowl in any of the 5 seasons? Hope you don't mind this non-Steelers specific email. Thought it'd be fun. I get where you're going there. That's a hypothetical that I don't think we'd ever see. But look, you have so many fallouts of draft classes yearly, and you have to supplement that some way or form in this scenario with free agents. And you have to, I would say no, there's no way that team, if they had to continue to play all 60 guys from a single draft, would retain all 60 players for 5 years. And even if they were an average division, league average schedule, had the best coach, whatever, I would, based on the way you're presenting this hypothetical, Paul, I would say, would they win a Super Bowl in any of these 5 seasons? I would, my gut tells me no.
It's a really fun question. I have no idea how to best answer that. I think about, how do you build an offensive line? Can you find 5 starters and depth when injury strike from just 60 guys from this pool? I wonder if you could just, reliably do that. I think, in some ways you could, in some ways you might struggle. How do you handle, I assume you're going to draft all the quarterbacks and just let them compete, but how do you do that?
Right.
How would you try to figure all that out? But really fun question. I just wonder, I think you'd have some stars.
What does your gut say? Do you think this team would win a Super Bowl in any of these 5 seasons?
No, I don't think that they would, because the hit rate on, so basically you're going to get like 30 good, you're going to get 30 guys that suck, that just don't work out or have injuries or whatever. You're going to have maybe 15 who are pretty good, 5 to 10 that are really tight, high A+ level type players. I don't know if it's going to be good enough. I don't know if your offensive line is going to be deep enough. I think you're going to have some real issues there.
All right. Thanks for the fun question, Paul. Time for us to wrap it up and get out of here.
Yep. We'll come back on Friday and see if any more pre-draft visitors come in and whatever else the sports world brings us.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, we have an ad-free version of the site available. Find that upper right navigational bar. Click the ad-free button there. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.